Greetings, it's your host, Gabe Morales. As stated in my East Coast Gangs book, there are hundreds of gangs active in that area, all the way from organized crime level down to pint-sized juveniles running around in loose-knit crews. I won't have time to cover all of them who are part of the underworld since the 1800s, but my book covers all of the major ones in New York's Five Points area up to many street gangs that are still active today. I also did a video on them that you can view on this channel if you want to see more of the historical information. In this video, I will cover New York Department of Corrections prisons and some of the security threat groups active within the system today, as well as some fairly new developments out on the streets. When I come back to cover some major U.S. jails, I will cover places like New York City's Rikers Island Jail. The New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision administrates the state's prison and parole system, including 41 prisons funded by the state. The state of New York currently incarcerates approximately 32,000 people and supervises just over 25,000 at last count. The department employs a staff of approximately 26,400 individuals as of March 2023. Including approximately 15,200 uniformed officers. The current commissioner of the department is Daniel F. Martashall III. The New York State prison system had its beginnings in 1797 with a prison called Newgate, located within the confines of New York City. A second state prison opened 20 years later in Auburn in 1817, and by 1825, a group of Auburn prisoners made the voyage across the Erie Canal down the Hudson River to begin building the infamous Sing Sing prison. Between its founding and the year 1973, New York had opened up only 18 prisons. But after the new focus on prison administration brought about by the bloody Attica prison riot in September 1971, and due to the new influx of prisoners created by a stricter Rockefeller drug law starting in 1973, the correction system expanded dramatically. This growth continued through the 1980s and 1990s during the crack cocaine epidemic. And these huge prison constructive initiatives became what some called the prison industrial complex. In more recent years, due to a combination of factors, including falling crime rates and prison sentencing reforms, as well as COVID-19 and other factors, there has been a steady decline in prison populations within the state of New York. And the department has closed many facilities since 2009. Between the years 2011 and 2022, nearly 20 prisons were closed, with plans for additional closures based on future analysis that there will be a continuing decline in the number of incarcerated individuals throughout the state. Out of the current 41 prisons still operating, New York oversees multiple maximum security prisons, including Attica, Auburn, Bedford Hills, Clinton, Coxsackie, Eastern, Five Points, Greenhaven, Shawangunk, Sing Sing, Upstate, and Wendy. Those facilities house the most dangerous inmates. I will only be covering maximum security joints in this video, and will only focus in on a few. The Attica Correctional Facility, as I stated, notable for the bloody riot that took place at the facility from September 9th through 13th, 1971, was the deadliest prison uprising in U.S. history that resulted with 43 deaths, 33 of them were inmates, and 10 were corrections officers that were held hostage. This was largely due to a final police assault and the use of National Guard shooters. In 1816, Assemblyman John H. Beach lobbied New York State to make the town of Auburn the site for a new prison. Thus, the Auburn prison is the second oldest in the prison system. They also were the first to introduce the electric chair that was soon adopted by other prisons throughout the country as being more humane than hanging. In contrast to the purely reformatory type of prison instituted in Pennsylvania, started by Quakers like William Penn, discussed in the last video, the Auburn system was more of a modified facility of scheduled prayer, contemplation, and the use of prisoners for hard labor. The contract labor of Auburn was very much financially beneficial to the state, producing large amounts of money from things such as the manufacturing of shoes and textiles during the 19th century. Prisoners were segregated by offense, and additionally, they were issued clothing that identified their crime. The traditional American prison uniform, consisting of horizontal black and white stripes, actually originated at the Auburn prison. Clinton Prison was known for being very violent in recent years, with 162 total incidents, 54 staff assaults, and 108 prisoner assaults being reported in 2022. The Eastern Correctional Facility opened in 1900 and has a very imposing main building structure, medieval-style turrets, and a long green copper roof. It has been a maximum security prison for men since 1973. The Elmira Prison, also known as The Hill, is a maximum security prison located in Chemung County, New York. It recently had 195 total violent incidents, 56 staff assaults, and 139 prisoner assaults, making it one of the most dangerous facilities in the state. The Five Points Prison is not the same as the original Five Points area in New York, known as the Tombs, that was built in the 1800s. This facility was built in the year 2000 and is located in the rural town of Romulus in Seneca County. It too has been very violent, with a reported 168 incidents, 108 staff assaults, and 60 prisoner assaults. I think I need to mention here that the notorious Sing Sing Correctional Facility is often depicted and spoken of in many Hollywood movies. The prison housed many notorious convicts over the years, including convicted spies Julius and Ethel Rosenberg and multiple members of Murder Incorporated. Some of New York's most notorious prisoners over the years include serial killers like David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam, and Mark David, aka Mad Max Chapman, as well as historical figures such as Albert the Werewolf of Wisteria Fish, a child rapist and cannibal, who was executed at Sing Sing in 1936. Eddie Lee Mays was the last person executed in New York State in 1963 at Sing Sing for robbery and murder. Tupac Shakur, Curtis Jackson, aka 50 Cent, DMX, and Sid Vicious of the punk bands The Sex Pistols have all done time in New York joints. The New York prison system has definitely seen a lot of changes over the years. Today, New York's incarceration system illustrates the sensitive balance between public safety, inmate management, and rehabilitation, highlighting lessons in crisis management, policy development, and the importance of monitoring violent behavior within correctional facilities when appropriate. There are many security threat groups present among New York DOC populations. Some of the biggest are the Bloods, Crips, Latin Kings, Ñetas, and Trinitarios. But there are also many independent money cliques, like Young Gunners. It is estimated that almost 50% of all shootings in New York City are due to some type of street gang confrontations. As far as street gangs, there are many in cities like Rochester, where my buddy Moses Robinson did great work when he was with the police department there. Buffalo, New York also has gangs. And my brother Cook Barrett still does gang intervention work with the city of Albany. You can see a video interview that I did with him to learn more about his great mission. I only have so much time, so I will concentrate on gangs still active on the streets of New York City. While many claim Crip or Blood, they often bear little resemblance to their LA counterparts. I remember when the two Wes's, Wes McBride, president of the California Gang Investigators Association, and Wes Daly, president of the East Coast Gang Investigators Association, were discussing them. And I remember them saying that the East Coast Bloods were using code books, something that LA Bloods rarely used, except for things like 187 to mean murder, taken directly from the California Criminal Penal Code. In New York, the Bloods have developed, in my opinion, much more indoctrination. For instance, they say that blood means brotherly love, overriding oppression and destruction. They also have 31 UBN rules, known as the 31. Rikers Island was allegedly the birthplace of the United Blood Nation, which is not the same as the earlier 1980s United Blood Nation that I dealt with in California. Supposedly, one of the East Coast UBN founders, Leonard O.G. Deadeye McKenzie, borrowed it from there and started it on either June 16th or July 17th, 1993, depending on the source, and hooked up with Omar O.G. McPortee to resist harassment from the Latin Kings that they met in custody. From New York City, the UBN spread out into state facilities and up and down the East Coast, becoming one of the dominant security threat groups in several states. For instance, when I interviewed my friend Warden Johnny Hawkins, he talked about how the Bloods moved into the North Carolina DOC system and became a major force. There are also some Crip sets within the state, even though they are outnumbered by Bloods by a margin of at least 3 to 1, which is opposite of what it is in California. East Coast Crips often will align with folk nations, in particular Gangster Disciples, but they may also beef with them. In June 2021, Larry Bislow Paget, the East Coast leader of the 8-Tray Crips, was sentenced to life imprisonment for murdering a rival member of the folk nation during a turf war whereby many gang members were arrested. Paget was convicted for murder in the aid of racketeering in October 2018. Manhattan, considered to be downtown and uptown New York City, has long been home to street gangs. The Rollin' 30s Harlem Crips were formed by Belize American Crips who had moved from South Central to Belize, and then some of them moved to Harlem. According to legend, they were established in New York City by Delmin Diamond Mahan and his two brothers, Kirkus and Morgan, and they expanded greatly. In 1997, it was said that the Rollin' 30s were making at least $4,000 per day in drug sales. The New York Latin King bloodline was started in 1986 by a former Cuban Madelito who was also said to have borrowed the concept from the Chicago motherland. His name was Luis Kingblood Felipe. Following a 1996 trial and conviction of Felipe, Antonio Kingtone Fernandez was blessed as the Inca and supreme crown over New York State. At that time, Kingtone was very political, and the Latin kings and queens began to appear en masse at political demonstrations in support of Latino causes. At this time, membership of the Bloodline Kings is believed to have swelled to around 3,000 incarcerated and 4,000 members on the streets. Their monthly universals often grew attendance of 500 to 600 members regularly, and you can see them highly represented at annual New York City Puerto Rican Day parades. In 1998, Fernandez pled guilty to conspiracy to sell and distribute heroin. In 1999, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison in the federal BOP. I have seen documents where he was given a check, a beatdown, by Chicago faction members as punishment for being part of a renegade faction, and the documents state that he was thereby cleared, just as long as he continued to recognize KMC as the true crown of the nation. Diego Quincasa Mateo founded the Black Mob in 2002 in the Bronx borough of New York and grew it into a network of about 300 members. The gang's power base was built on drug trafficking, including heroin, fentanyl, and cocaine, and they had a reputation for using extreme violence. It was the largest Latin Kings faction in the New York area in recent years. He was sentenced to 27 years in federal prison in June 2023 for his role in criminal activities. The Bronx has long been known for gang activity and had a big role in the growth of the hip-hop culture. Mi hermano Edwin Santana and Cole Rodriguez were a part of that scene, and I interviewed both of them on this channel. I also interviewed Eddie about New Jersey gangs, and I'll come back to him when I cover New Jersey DOC. Like much of the Bronx, the Highbridge area was home to white families until the 1960s, when Hispanics and blacks began moving in the area. Female rapper Cardi B is from there. The Cortlandt Avenue section of the South Bronx has cliques like God's Favorite Children, also known as Gangsters from Cortlandt, or Cortlandt Over Everything. There are also some affiliates of Original Goons, Mac Ballas, and Sex Money Murder Bloods. The West Bronx has the Burnside Money Gang in the Morris Heights neighborhood. Only 3 members of that gang were busted by the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision for running a drug racket from inside prison out to the streets. There's Southside around 187th with cliques like 700 Dead on Arrival, Mac Ballas, and more Sex Money Murder Bloods. Co-op City in the North Bronx is divided into sections 1 through 4, all having their own separate hoods. Some there claim Rollin' 30s Crips, Guerrilla Gangster Crips, Stone Bloods, and Young Gunnas. Right next to Co-op City is the Valley, known as being the home of OG rapper Slick Rick, who was British but often hung out in that area and sometimes worked with Dougie Fresh. In 2018, Trinitarios gang members murdered 15-year-old Leandro Guzman Felix in the Bronx. They gained high notoriety on the news. On June 14, 2019, 5 suspects were convicted of his murder and were sentenced to life in prison. In Brooklyn, there is the Sunset Park area that is mostly Latino gangs like Ñetas, Latin Kings, and Trinitarios. The old Red Hook projects consist of mostly black gangs like Brims, Bloods, and some Gangster Disciples. The Fort Gut houses, aka the Gut, has Brims, and the Fort Greene area has some G-Stone Crips as well as some Bloodhound Brims. The Tompkins projects and summer houses of Bed-Stuy have independent money cliques like the 900 Gang, Stack Money Goons, and Jason Fam. Roosevelt projects in Bed-Stuy produce rappers like Jay-Z and Biggie Smalls, aka Notorious B.I.G. But today certain sections of Bed-Stuy have experienced a lot of gentrification. The Gates Avenue area is a well-known stretch along Bed-Stuy, which is home to various gangs and money crews. The Bushwick area has Team Banging Out or True Bosses Only, aka TBO. The Ocean Hill area, aka the Hill of Brownsville, has the Loot Gang, which is an independent money clique. And it also has some primetime Brims and Bloods. Franklin Avenue fam, aka FAF, in the Crown Heights neighborhood, has a lot of Jamaicans living there, and some of the youth there claim Guerrilla Stonebloods or Gangster Crips. Crown Heights also has Tactical Movers Only, aka TMO, and some Insane Crips. The Bowerside area has some primetime Brims, Mac Ballas, as well as Grape Street Crips. Flatbush area was well known for white gangs back in the 1940s through 60s, but is now mostly blacks. Some there claim 90s, G-Stone Crips, and Gangster Crips. Near them are some 40s and 50s who understand ride Gangster Disciples. The Southside Jamaica Queens area was home to Fred McGriff and the Supreme Team, as well as 50 Cent, Lost Boys, and Nicki Minaj. The Hollis area of Queens produced Run DMC, Jam Master Jay, and Ja Rule. The St. Albans area is where LL Cool J and A Tribe Called Quest are from. The Rockdale village of Queens, around 131st and Guy Brewer, spawned the Snow Gang and Loyalty Over Everything money cliques. Staten Island, while considered to be middle class or even rich in some parts, like where former mob boss Paul Castellano lived, also has some hood money cliques. According to my buddy Lou Savelli, former NYPD gang sergeant, Mexican national gangs formed on the East Coast during the mid to late 1990s, when Mexicans started arriving in greater numbers in the greater New York City area. They often formed violent street gangs made up of local youth, and often found themselves at odds with already established gangs. Many of them banded together for protection and created two umbrella nations, known as La Gran Raza or La Gran Familia. Nearby Long Island also has a lot of Salvatrcuha and some 18th Street, as well as several independent money cliques. The New York Hells Angels, who started in California, have been strong for many years in the city, although I understand they had to recently sell their clubhouse, which they did not particularly like. And they are traditional rivals of the Pagans MC, who I understand soon shot up their new clubhouse. In January of this year, members of the Demons of Hell, who support the HAs, stabbed and then beat a Pagans member with a hammer, leaving him so badly injured that he required emergency surgery. On the other side of the clash, Long Island members of the Pagans acted together to beat a 76-year-old rival who was associated with the HAs with baseball bats and other weapons, causing his brain to hemorrhage, leaving him needing multiple surgeries as well. Understand that the bloody clash started inside a sports bar and grill before the bloodbath moved 5 miles to a Phillips 66 gas station in Lindenhurst. According to authorities, the chaos was ignited on September 14, 2025, when alleged members of the Demons of Hell crashed a memorial service for a Pagans member at West Islip Bar. Mongo's MC also expanded to New York in recent years. The Outlaws MC also has some presence within the state. So, I know that was quick, but I wanted to give you an idea, at least, of what is happening right now within New York DOC, as well as on the streets of the Big Apple. I've been working my butt off here at the ranch to rebuild from Hurricane Lala, and now we got Moke coming in. So if you're interested in donating, you could hit me up and I'll give you my contacts. I hope you enjoyed this information, and please stay tuned for more as we cover Department of Corrections agencies throughout the rest of the United States. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.